The lawn care industry doesn't want you looking too closely at this bottle, because if people understood what's actually in it, half the weed killer aisle would disappear. I've gardened for 25 years. I didn't learn this from a magazine or from the guy at the store pointing me toward the $40 jug. I learned it by wasting money and killing plants I didn't mean to kill until I figured out what vinegar can actually do in a garden. And what it can't. That second part matters more than anyone selling you a product wants you to know. 9 ways to use vinegar in your garden. Weeds, pests, soil, tools, irrigation. 9 because I want this to be the only video you need. Stick around for tip 7. Took me over a decade to figure out. It changes how you think about weed control completely. I'll tell you exactly when we get there. Drop your zone or state in the comments. Some of these tips shift with your climate and soil. I want you using the right concentration for your backyard, not some generic number. Tip 1. Read your soil like a pro. Almost nobody starts with this, even though it's the foundation for everything else in this video. Before you spend $1 on soil amendments, sulfur, or a fancy pH meter, grab your vinegar. Plain 5% white vinegar is the fastest way to find out if you're dealing with calcareous soil. Soil loaded with calcium carbonate. It's the #1 reason people dump bag after bag of sulfur into their beds year after year and watch nothing happen. Here's why it works. Calcium carbonate reacts with acetic acid, vinegar's acid, and releases carbon dioxide gas. So the test is simple. Take a ball of dry soil, drip a few drops of vinegar on it. If it fizzes, that's your answer. Your soil is heavily buffered with carbonate and it'll resist any attempt to lower the pH no matter how much sulfur you throw at it. That soil acidifier you were about to buy. In carbonate-heavy soil, you're not fixing anything. You're fighting a battle you can't win. No fizzing, that tells you something too. Your soil isn't heavily buffered, and pH amendments actually have a shot at working. 30 seconds, no labs, no mail-in kit, no 2-week wait. You know exactly what you're standing on before you spend another $1. 2 cautions. Use dry soil. Moisture mutes the reaction, and this test tells you about buffering, not your exact pH number. For that, get a real soil test through your local cooperative extension office. Think of this as your first filter. It tells you whether chasing a pH change is even worth it. Most people skip straight to buying something. The gardeners who get results start here. 3 drops of vinegar, 30 seconds. Tip 2. The monthly water trick garden centers never mention. For anyone growing in containers, pots, raised beds, greenhouse trays, hanging baskets. If your tap water is hard, and most municipal water is, you're fighting a problem you don't even know exists. Hard water pushes your soil's pH up over months and dissolved calcium and magnesium build up right at the root zone. Your plant sits in its own mineral crust. Nutrients stop being available even with a perfect fertilizer schedule. This is exactly why people buy root boosters for years and never fix the actual cause. The fix costs pennies a month. Once a month, not every watering. Once a month, add 1 teaspoon of white vinegar per gallon of water. That's it. The acid buffers the alkalinity in your tap water and stops calcium and magnesium from crusting around your roots. You're not dumping acid on your plant. You're conditioning the water first. Why doesn't anyone tell you this? There's no product to sell. No bottle of premium water conditioner with a 30% markup. It's a teaspoon of something already in your kitchen. The caution matters. Once a month. Do this every watering, thinking more is better, and you'll over-acidify the root zone. Stressed roots that can't take up water. This is maintenance, not treatment, like flossing. Growing acid lovers, blueberries, azaleas, camellias. This one trick can be the difference between a plant that limps along yellow for years and one that finally thrives. Because you fixed the water, not the symptom. This is the tip the industry hopes you never hear. Once you know it, you stop buying their bottled fix. Didn't know that trick? Hit subscribe now. Tips like this, the ones that quietly save you money every month, that's what this channel is built on. 7 more to go. Tip 3. Stopping mushrooms from taking over your beds. Ever walked outside and found a ring of mushrooms in your mulch or lawn overnight? This one's for you. Most people panic and reach for a synthetic fungicide or just ignore it and hope it goes away. Here's what's actually happening. Those mushrooms are only the visible part. An entire mycelial network is spreading underground, decomposing organic matter, and it's been there long before a single cap poked through. First step, don't skip it. Pull up and discard any mushrooms you see before they release more spores. Then the vinegar move. Mix 5 tablespoons of white vinegar into a gallon of water. Apply directly to the affected soil. The acid drops the surface pH right where the fungus is fruiting and disrupts the cell walls trying to push through. You're not sterilizing the whole bed, just the zone where mushrooms keep showing up. I'll be straight with you, this isn't a permanent cure. It suppresses fruiting in that spot. It won't necessarily wipe out a large, established network, especially with decomposing wood mulch feeding it underneath. Mushrooms usually mean excess moisture and organic matter breaking down. If the same spot keeps producing them season after season, that's your soil telling you something about drainage or mulch depth. Vinegar alone won't fix that. But for the "I don't want these popping up around my kids or my dog this weekend" problem, fast, cheap works exactly where you apply it. No 3-day wait for a fungicide to ship. No dilution rate buried in a 6-point font on a bottle you can't read. Tip 4. The real reason vinegar kills some weeds and not others. This is what most of you searched for: weed control, but walk through this carefully because this is exactly where the garden center benefits from your confusion. It's where almost every homemade vinegar recipe online falls apart. Here's the mechanism. Once you understand it, you'll never waste vinegar on the wrong weed again. Horticultural vinegar, 20% to 30% acetic acid, not the 5% jug in your pantry, works entirely through direct contact. It dissolves the outer cell membranes of whatever green tissue it touches. That tissue collapses and dries out, sometimes within 4 hours. Almost identical to how a synthetic contact herbicide like paraquat works, just from an organic acid instead of a lab chemical. But here's the part nobody warns you about, and it's exactly why people try this once, get frustrated, and go back to the expensive stuff. Vinegar has zero systemic movement. It can't travel down into the root system. It only kills what it touches on the surface. On a young weed just germinated under 4 centimeters thin waxy cuticle, it works fast and well. The acid punches straight through. But on a mature dandelion, an established thistle, a spreading patch of poison ivy with a real root system, you'll burn every leaf off within a day. It'll look dead. Then 2-3 weeks later it's back. Because the root never felt a thing. That's not vinegar failing, that's the wrong tool for the wrong job. So here's how you use it right. Hit young weeds early, within their first 10 days, with a directed spray of 20% to 30% horticultural vinegar. Directed, narrow nozzle, not a mist. This solution doesn't know the difference between a weed and your tomato plant. For anything with a real taproot already established, hand pull while the soil is damp, or accept vinegar is round 1, not the whole fight. And there's something in the research worth knowing. This isn't folk wisdom, it's documented. Even Palmer amaranth, a weed that's developed glyphosate resistance in many regions, meaning even the strongest chemical option often doesn't work on it anymore, vinegar still has a role, not as a kill switch on a mature plant, as an early suppression tool. I'll come back to exactly how in tip 7. One serious caution: horticultural strength vinegar is corrosive. Real chemical burns on skin, permanent eye damage if it splashes near your face. Registered products at this concentration are legally required to carry the signal word danger, the same warning level as far harsher chemicals. This is not your kitchen vinegar. Gloves, eye protection, long sleeves, every time, no exceptions. Tip 5. Slug and snail patrol without the toxic pellets. If slugs or snails have ever turned your basil, beans, or lettuce into Swiss cheese overnight, you know the frustration. Most people reach for metal diet slug bait, those little blue-green pellets. Sure, it works, but it's toxic to pets, toxic to birds that eat a slug that's already ingested it, and you're paying $8 to $15 for a bag you'll rebuy every season because the first good rain washes half of it away before it does its job. Here's the vinegar version. Mix 50-50 equal parts white vinegar and water into a spray bottle. Spot a slug or snail on a leaf or crawling across a path, spray it directly, right on the pest. The acid breaks down its mucus layer and outer skin almost immediately. Death by rapid dehydration follows fast. This works on more than typical garden slugs. Dealing with invasive hammerhead worms, those long, flat, dark worms spreading through home gardens and genuinely harmful to your beneficial earthworms? Same solution, direct contact, no touching one with your bare hands. The caution, same principle as tip 4, worth repeating. This only works as direct contact on the pest itself. Don't spray it around your plants thinking it'll create a barrier. You'll kill the exact plants you're trying to protect. Spot the pest, spray the pest, done. Do the math? A bag of slug bait costs real money. Season after season, you're buying the same handful of active ingredient over and over. This spray bottle costs pennies, refills instantly, and the main ingredients already in your kitchen. Keeping a running total of what these 9 tips would cost you as separate products, it's already adding up. 4 tips left, including the one I promised you at the start. Subscribe now so you don't lose your place. Tip 6. Rescuing rusted tools without buying new ones. It's not about your plants or about your tools. A rusted trowel, rusted pruners, a rusted spade, that's not just cosmetic. It transfers plant pathogens every time you cut into a healthy plant with a corroded blade. The garden center's answer? Buy new tools. $15, $20, $50 a piece for something you already own just because it's got some orange scale on it. Here's what I do instead. Mix a 1-to-1 solution of white vinegar and water. Fully submerge the rusted tool for 12 to 24 hours. The acetic acid reacts with the iron oxide, the rust, and converts it into a soluble compound that lifts right off the base metal. Here's the step almost everyone gets wrong, the difference between this working and backfiring completely. Once the soak's done, scrub the tool with steel wool or a wire brush while it's still wet. Let that acidic residue air dry on bare metal first, and you're not stopping the reaction, you're accelerating a fresh wave of rust. You'll end up worse off than when you started. After scrubbing, rinse completely, dry thoroughly, then wipe down with isopropyl alcohol to kill any lingering pathogens on the blade, especially if you've cut into diseased plant material. Finish with a light coat of mineral oil or linseed oil. That's what keeps moisture off going forward, so you're not doing this exact job again in 6 months. One more warning, and this one's serious. Never mix vinegar with household bleach, not for tools, not for pots, not for anything in the garden. Acid plus sodium hypochlorite releases toxic chlorine gas. Descaling and sanitizing are 2 separate steps. Full water rinse in between, never the same bucket. Total cost: a bottle of vinegar you already own, some steel wool, and evening. Compare that to replacing your tool shed every couple years. Tip 7, the one that took me over a decade to figure out. This is the one from the start of the video. Stick with me, this is genuinely different from everything else we've covered. It's the tip that changed how I think about weed control. Everything so far has been about killing what's already up and growing. This one's different. It's about stopping the fight before it starts. There's real agricultural research behind this, not garden blog folklore, looking at aggressive weeds like Palmer amaranth. I mentioned it in tip 4, resistant to glyphosate in a lot of regions, meaning the strongest chemical tool a lot of growers have doesn't reliably work anymore. So researchers looked for alternatives. Here's what they found: a lower concentration of vinegar, 5% to 10%, not full horticultural strength, applied early, right as weeds emerge, doesn't necessarily kill them outright. But it does something more valuable long-term. It stunts the formation of their waxy outer coating and slows early development. Why does that matter? That waxy coating is the weed's armor. It's what lets it hold water, resist stress, and outcompete everything around it. Suppress that development early at germination and your desirable plants get a real window to get ahead, outcompeting the weed for light, water, and nutrients instead of fighting a fully armored opponent all season. This is the difference between spraying reactively, chasing weeds that keep popping back up in the same spots, and applying strategically early at a lower concentration and letting your plants win the competition on their own terms. I spent years spraying harder, believing more vinegar meant more control. It took a long time to understand that timing and concentration mattered more than raw strength. I'll be straight with you, this is not a kill switch. It's a suppression strategy. Works best as part of a consistent early season routine applied right as weeds germinate, not a one-time fix. But once you understand this, you start looking at every weed differently, not something you're destroying after the fact, something you're outcompeting from the start. Resistance, already covered in tip 4, repeating it in full risks feeling like padding on the payoff tip. Tightened the personal journey beat, I spent years spraying harder. To one clean sentence so the emotional payoff lands without slowing the pace right before the mechanism recap. Tip 8, the one I won't oversell you on. I want to be honest, here is what matters more than hyping every tip like a miracle cure. You've probably seen vinegar traps, a jar of vinegar hung near fruit trees marketed to control fruit flies, specifically spotted wing Drosophila. A real problem if you're growing raspberries, blueberries, or other soft fruit. Here's what's true: vinegar traps work as a monitoring tool. They attract these flies well enough that researchers use this exact method to track population buildup, so growers know when to time treatments instead of guessing or spraying on a fixed schedule regardless of whether the pest is even there. Here's what I won't let you walk away believing. I've watched people hang a dozen traps thinking they've solved their fruit fly problem for the season. Vinegar traps alone are not an effective way to control the population. They catch some flies, they give you timing information, they don't replace an actual pest management plan. I'm telling you straight because I'd rather you know exactly what a tool can and can't do than have you been disappointed 3 weeks from now when your raspberries are still getting hit despite the traps hanging right there. Use them to tell you when pest pressure is building. That's genuinely valuable, the same principle commercial growers use. Just don't stop there. This is exactly the kind of thing the industry benefits from. A cheap trick that only does half the job. People assume gardening is just hard, give up, and buy the expensive spray instead of learning the one step that closes the gap. Tip 9. Keeping your whole water system running clean. This is the last tip, the one that ties everything else together, because none of the other 8 matter much if the systems delivering water to your garden are clogged, scaled up, or breeding bacteria without you knowing it. Running drip irrigation. You know the nightmare of clogged emitters. Well, water especially is loaded with dissolved minerals that build up as scale inside your lines, valves, and faucet aerators. Once that scale forms, your system delivers water unevenly, starving some plants, flooding others just a few feet away. The fix commercial nurseries actually use: periodically flush the lines and soak the valve components in a dilute vinegar solution. Dissolves the buildup, restores even flow. No need to rip out your irrigation setup, just descale it, same as descaling a coffee maker. Same principle for terracotta pots. Porous clay soaks up dissolved minerals from water and fertilizer over time, leaving that white crusty efflorescence creeping up the sides. Soak a crusted pot overnight, about 12 hours, in a 16:1 mix of water to vinegar. The alkaline crust dissolves enough to scrub away with steel wool. And remember tip 6, never combine that soak with bleach. Descaling and sanitizing are separate steps with a full rinse between. Bird baths or hummingbird feeders in your garden. This matters more than most people realize. Stagnant water breeds bacteria fast, including pathogens like salmonella, which can harm the birds you're trying to attract. A 9 parts water to 1 part vinegar solution, scrubbed in and rinsed completely, keeps that bath actually clean, not just visually clean. For hummingbird feeders, it's more critical. A tablespoon of vinegar per cup of water during every refill prevents black mold from forming in the sugar water. That mold is toxic to the birds you're feeding. Most people skip this tip. It's not glamorous. It's not kill this weed or stop this pest, it's maintenance. But maintenance is what makes tips 1 through 8 keep working season after season instead of starting over every spring. 9 ways to use vinegar in your garden. Testing your soil before you spend a dime. Stopping weeds before they establish. Keeping your tools, your pots, your whole water system clean, all from one bottle that's probably already in your kitchen. Add up what you'd spend buying a separate product for each of these: soil tester, water conditioner, fungicide, weed killer, slug bait, rust remover, irrigation descaler. You're easily past $100 a season. Everything here costs a few dollars total for the year. If you've spent years fighting the same weeds, the same pests, the same rusted tools every spring, feeling one step behind whatever the garden center wanted to sell you next, you weren't doing anything wrong. Nobody handed you this information. There was never any money in it for the people selling you the alternative. Picture your garden next season. Weeds are handled before they take hold, tools clean and rust-free. Soil is actually working the way it's supposed to. That's the garden that makes your neighbors ask what you're doing differently. If this helps, subscribe. More of these coming. Real mechanisms explained clearly, not tricks you take on faith. Drop a comment. Which of these 9 are you trying first? I read every one.